Let's talk to our panel about this now. The Hill opinion columnist and Independent Women's Voice fellow Kristin Tate, and Fox News contributor and Washington Times opinion editor Charlie Hurt. Thanks both for joining us.
Thank you, Gerry.
So, Kristin, let me start with you. Let's start with China and the U.S. President Biden spoke Friday with President Xi Jinping. We don't know all the details of what was said. Of course, President Xi has promised to, he wants the war in the Ukraine to come to an end. But China's very firmly on Russia's side. China is clearly not budging. Is the U.S., do you think, doing enough in terms of getting China to... China has so much influence over Russia. Could the U.S. be doing more to get China, to get Russia to back off in Ukraine, Kristin?
Of course, we could be doing more, and China is the biggest geopolitical threat that we face today. The problem is we need strong leadership that can command respect from other world leaders. But unfortunately, with Biden, when he makes a threat to our enemies like Putin, those threats often aren't taken seriously because he's exposed America as a paper tiger and really kind of defined our foreign policy by appeasement. I mean, we ceded Afghanistan to the Taliban. He seems to be well on the way to providing a nuclear arsenal to Iran. In Ukraine, he totally failed at deterring Putin from attacking with just the mere threat of sanctions, and then only gradually put in place sanctions after they attacked. He was very resistant to ban the import of Russian oil, and he had to be prodded to provide more arms to the Ukrainians who desperately need them. So we are weak, and our enemies know it, and that includes China. And by the way, Gerry, we're not just weak abroad, we're also weak at home. Our politicians spend their days trying to come up with new ways to foolishly spend trillions of dollars every couple of months. It is destroying our economy. I mean, the Senate just passed this $1.5 trillion boondoggle of a spending bill. How can we be a global superpower and remain the world's reserve currency when we are just destroying our own economy from within? So these are scary times, and
Charlie,
Biden is leading with weakness.
Charlie, it does look as though Biden is being kind of dragged along here. I mean, we had the spectacle of Afghanistan, of course, which was very damaging for U.S. Strength in the world. But even on Ukraine, and I think most people think, they're doing a reasonably good job in terms of the diplomatic response. But it looks like Democrats and Republicans, both in Congress, actually are willing to go much further than the Biden administration and are kind of forcing the Biden administration to take a stronger line.
Yeah, throughout we have seen the Biden administration kind of reacting to movement in Congress, trying to push them along probably farther than the Biden administration wants to go. But I think you're exactly right. I think that, I have a lot of criticism for the Biden administration for the way they've handled this. I would argue that the entire reason we're in the situation we're in, obviously all the blame resides with Putin himself. But Joe Biden did an enormous amount to create this situation that we're in, that we shouldn't be in the first place. And I think that, and I would like to say that I totally agree with what Kristin just said. This whole debate has sort of has ground down into this nasty, idiotic thing about people who are reserved about wanting to get involved in Ukraine or somehow pro-Putin or isolationist. When the fact remains, these same foreign policy experts who have allowed this to happen have been involved in Ukraine for a very long time. And at the end of the day, the greatest foreign policy platform that we can have is a prosperous national security and prosperous home policies here at home. That's the greatest beacon of hope in the world.
When we come back, we'll talk more about the U.S. role, particularly what's going on in the Middle East and whether the U.S. is losing the plot there too. Stay with us. I'm back with Kristin Tate and Charlie Hurt. Kristin, let's talk briefly about Iran, the Middle East more widely. The U.S. the Biden administration is in the weird position, still trying to get a deal with Iran over its nuclear program, using a Russian as an intermediary for this, and Russians are kind of demanding concessions. So even as we're imposing sanctions on Russia, Russia's trying to get something out of us in order to do a deal with an Iranian power that still kind of wants to wipe out Israel and is such a threat to the Middle East. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, this administration has shown it's basically willing to give the store to Iran. I mean, between billions in concessions and sanction relief, an end to terrorist sanctions, and very flimsy restrictions on uranium enrichment, this administration has shown, once again, weakness when it is dealing with an increasingly hostile regime. And as you mentioned, the whole time we're allowing Russia to control these negotiations. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's infuriating. infuriating and it's dangerous.
And Charlie, just briefly, say what you will about Donald Trump. He had a very clear strategy in the Middle East, backing Saudi Arabia against Iran, pulling out of the Iranian deal. We seem to be in a muddle in terms of, and we're losing allies in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia turning increasingly towards China. We seem to be losing our influence in the Middle East.
Yeah, well, the President Trump's policy of America first was not only good for America and our people here, but it was good for the world because even enemies knew where we stood and acted accordingly. And when you have a president like President Biden who has I don't even know where he stands on half of this stuff, trying to negotiate something with an evil regime like Iran or Russia, they take advantage of it.
Thank you both, Kristin Tate and Charlie Hurt. Thanks very much for joining us. Please join us again. And